The hollow sky was always breathing. Not in the way a person breathes, slow and steady, shallow or deep. No, the sky above us had a rhythm that was erratic, strange, like it was alive, like it could feel. And maybe it did. I've seen the clouds twist and writhe, seething in dark, bruised patterns as if in pain. Sometimes, the sky would shudder and heave, rolling thick with the scent of something foul. It was as if it were a thing alive, a thing trying to survive itself. The air under the hollow sky was never clear. There were days when the wind would push down clouds so thick that the sun wouldn't even dare to show its face. Those days were always worse. The breath of the sky would become heavier, and the city would hold its breath along with it. We had learned long ago that you didn't take a breath too deep when the air turned thick and cloying. You didn't trust it. Not when the hollow sky decided to release its poison. I was a child when I first learned how to read the clouds. I didn't understand it at first, the way the older ones would squint up at the sky, their lips moving in silent prayer or desperate calculation. I had asked my mother once why they did that, why they paid so much attention to the clouds. "Because the sky is watching us," she had said in her quiet, hushed voice. "And when it moves like that, we must listen. It has moods, just like people." I didn't understand then, but I do now. The hollow sky has moods, and they change with each passing hour. Could be calm for a while, just clouds gently shifting in the blue, though it's always the faintest shade of gray. That's when we would breathe easy, take our chances, maybe go outside. But in the back of your mind, you always knew it could change. You could see it. 1 minute, a puff of white lazily turning over in the wind, and then a shadow stretching over it, dark and consuming. Then the air would thicken, and you'd feel the shift deep in your bones. On those days, we stayed inside. The city turned quiet. The merchants packed up their stalls. The children ran indoors, and the streets emptied. But still, we were never truly safe. The hollow sky had its ways of finding you, even inside. I remember the first time I felt it. The sky's breath creeping through the cracks of the windows. I had been only 14, and the first sign had been the tremor in the air. At first, I thought it was just a draft. But then the air tasted wrong. Acrid, biting at the back of my throat like something had slipped into it. I had stepped into the hallway, looking out the narrow window, and saw the clouds. They weren't just clouds. Not anymore. They moved like a living thing, tendrils of dark fog swirling in a slow, deliberate spiral. That's when I saw the first sign. The sky had a hunger in it, a hunger that I could feel crawling beneath my skin. Something was coming. I never told anyone what I saw that day, but it didn't matter. It was already too late. Once you've seen the hollow sky breathe, it owns you. There's no running. Not from it. Not from the city that was drowning beneath it. Every living thing, from the smallest rat to the tallest building, breathed in the same air. We all choked on it, slowly suffocating, trying to understand it. No one had figured out where it had come from or why it existed. There were rumors, of course, always rumors. Some said it had been the product of an old, failed experiment. Some claimed the sky had always been alive, but it had been asleep for centuries, and now it had woken up hungry. Others whispered about a curse, an ancient one, that had been placed upon the city, a punishment for the greed of the people who had lived here long before us. I didn't know which story was true. No one did. We just lived beneath it. I learned quickly that you could predict its moods if you paid close enough attention. Not with logic or science, there was no science for this, but with instinct, with fear sharpened to a fine point. The color of the clouds mattered, the way they pulsed, the faint vibration in the air. Sometimes, I could feel it in my chest before I even saw it, the sky shifting from laziness to hunger. That was always the worst. When the clouds moved too deliberately, when the wind bent in unnatural patterns, you knew that the sky was preparing to strike. My neighbors didn't understand. They laughed at the warnings I muttered under my breath, shaking their heads as I pulled my scarf tighter across my mouth. "It's just fog," they would say. "Just weather." They didn't last long. No one who ignored the sky ever did. I remember the day I realized that the hollow sky could reach into the city like a living thing, like it had arms that could snake through windows, doors, cracks in walls. I had been walking down the main street, the wind sharp against my skin, and the clouds had lowered suddenly. One moment, the streets were empty. The next, I could smell it. A sweet, choking smell that made my eyes water. I turned around and saw the first body. A man, collapsed on the cobblestones, convulsing violently, foam at his mouth. No one had touched him. No one had been near. The sky had touched him. It had claimed him. From that day, I stopped looking up in innocence. I never saw the hollow sky without a sense of dread, a creeping horror that settled in my stomach like a stone. And yet, I couldn't stop watching. There was something addictive about it, the way the clouds moved, the way they breathed, as if they were alive and thinking. I had nightmares that I was floating up into the sky, swallowed by it, turning into vapor that pulsed with its rhythm. I would wake up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat, but I couldn't stop thinking about it during the day either. Some nights I would go to the rooftop when the sky was calm and pale, and I would whisper to it. "I see you," I'd say. "I know you're there." I never expected an answer. Not at first. But one night I felt it. A shift so sudden and terrifying that it knocked me off my feet. The clouds pulsed directly above me, dark veins of black and green, expanding and contracting. The air thickened, almost solid, and I swear I heard a low, resonant exhale, like the sky itself had sighed. An acknowledgement, a warning, a threat. I ran, stumbled back inside, and bolted the door behind me. I had no idea if it had followed me, but I didn't care. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. The city beneath the hollow sky had its own rules. You learned to move quickly, to hide, to sense when the clouds were calm enough to risk stepping outside. Even those rules weren't safe. One wrong misstep, one misread sign, and you would never be seen again. Some people left, tried to escape, thinking the sky couldn't follow them beyond the city walls. They were wrong. I know because I have seen the hollow sky extend its reach past the limits of what should be possible. The air outside the city would ripple, pulse with life, and then a cloud would form in the distance, spreading slowly toward the wanderers. They never returned. It made me paranoid, yes, obsessive, but it also made me stronger. Not physically, not in the sense that anyone would notice, but mentally. You develop a sort of armor when the sky wants to kill you. You learn to watch, to anticipate, to listen. And yet, that armor never lasts for long. Every time the clouds pulse, every time the air thickens and the smell of poison creeps into your nose, the fear comes back. Fresh, sharp, alive. Tonight, the sky is restless again. I can feel it through the walls, through the floorboards, in the little hairs on the back of my neck. The clouds are low, heavier than normal, tinged with violet and green, quivering like something waiting for a command. I can hear the faint hum beneath it all, the pulsing, the breathing. I know it's watching me. I know it's hungry. I have a choice. Go out, risk what's waiting, or stay inside and wait for it to come for me anyway. I've always been a fool. I step outside. The wind hit me the moment I stepped outside, a sudden force that felt alive, like it was pushing me back. The clouds above pulsed and twisted, veins of black crawling across their surface like some monstrous network. I could taste the poison even before it reached me, a metallic tang in the air that made my tongue swell and my stomach turn. My chest tightened. I should have run. I should have turned back. But something deeper inside me, that dark curiosity I couldn't escape, urged me forward. The streets were empty, though I could feel movement all around me. Shadows of the city swayed unnaturally, stretched too long, too thin, and every reflection in the puddles looked wrong, like it had a life of its own. The hollow sky doesn't just kill, you can survive, but it changes you, warps you, leaves a mark in your mind, a scar that whispers every time the clouds shift. I saw it first out of the corner of my eye, a figure walking but wrong. Its movement wasn't natural. Its arms flailed slightly off rhythm with the rest of it, head tilting at impossible angles. I blinked. Then I saw more. People, or what had once been people, dragging themselves along the cobblestones. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, eyes glazed with a dull light. The air around them shimmered faintly, as if the clouds themselves were feeding them from above. I gagged, trying not to inhale too deeply. A pulse of wind struck me, violent and sudden, and I stumbled backward. The clouds rippled in response, and I felt it again. The breathing, deliberate, intelligent. The hollow sky was testing me. I could almost hear it thinking, probing, like it was learning how fear tasted on me. My heart raced. My legs shook. I had to move, had to find shelter. I ducked into a narrow alley, pressing myself against the cold stone wall. The air there was slightly thinner, slightly easier to breathe, but I could still hear it. The hum beneath it all, the pulsing, the inhaling and exhaling of something alive above. Then I heard a voice. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But it wasn't. It was faint, almost teasing, a whisper that drifted down from the clouds. Why do you run?" it hissed. I choked, trying to understand, to locate the source. No one was there. The street was empty except for the twisted shapes that moved like puppets under the sky's influence. I stumbled further down the alley, heart hammering, until I saw the source of the shadowed figures. A man, or a thing that had once been a man, stood in the center of a courtyard. His eyes glowed faintly with the same unnatural light I'd seen before. And above him, the clouds pulsated directly, thick tendrils descending toward him like fingers of smoke. I froze. The thing lifted its hand toward me, but it didn't move naturally. It was a slow, deliberate gesture, each movement exaggerated, as if the hollow sky itself was puppeteering it. My legs refused to obey, rooted in terror. Then the sky pulsed again. The tendrils snapped toward me, the wind carrying a metallic taste, sharp enough to burn my throat. I realized in that moment that the hollow sky wasn't just alive. It was aware. It knew I had seen it, knew I had stepped into its reach, knew that I was tasting its presence. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached a building with a heavy door and slammed it shut behind me. My chest heaved, lungs burning, but I could still hear it. The low hum, the pulsing, the breathing. Outside, I could feel it stretching, testing, probing the city for any weakness. And then I understood something terrifying. The hollow sky doesn't just breathe. It watches, it learns, it waits. It adapts. Every time you see it, every time you breathe its air, it becomes a little more aware, a little more hungry. I slid down the wall, curling up on the floor as the taste of iron lingered in my mouth. I could hear the faint, distorted echoes of the city outside, the sounds of movement, of life being warped by the sky's invisible hand. I was alive, yes, but for how long? And how much of me was still truly mine? Even in the darkness of that small room, I could feel the pulsing through the walls. It was patient, calculating, and it was waiting for me to step outside again. The air didn't change. The clouds still hung, thick and pulsating, casting shadows over the city that never seemed to leave. The walls of the room I had locked myself in felt like they were pressing in, closing tighter with every breath I took. I couldn't breathe without tasting the poison, couldn't move without feeling the weight of the hollow sky pressing down on me. Even in the dark, it was there, watching, waiting. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The unnatural, twitching figures on the streets, those pale, hollow-eyed people dragged like marionettes beneath the clouds. They weren't like the others I had seen before, the ones who lost themselves to the sky. These things were different. They were the city's people, but not. There was something about them, something off in the way their limbs contorted and their eyes glazed over that made me feel something darker than fear. They were aware, and the hollow sky had made them that way. I couldn't stop thinking about it, the way the clouds had reacted to me, the way they had shown me that they were learning, adapting. I knew what the hollow sky wanted. It didn't just want to kill, it wanted to change us. It wanted to turn us into whatever twisted thing it was. I was starting to see the signs everywhere, hidden beneath the surface. No one talked about it, but everyone knew. The sky had been doing this for longer than anyone cared to remember. The city was a breeding ground for its experiments. But there were stories, always stories, whispered rumors in dark corners. People spoke of the before, The time when the city wasn't suffocating under the weight of the hollow sky. They said the sky wasn't always like this. It had been a different sky once. A sky that provided warmth, sunlight, freedom. They said the people who lived here before had used it. They harnessed the clouds, took advantage of its energy until one day, something went wrong. No one knew exactly what, but they said the sky changed. It became something else, something alive, something with a hunger for them. And those who stayed, those who couldn't leave, had been consumed. The city had turned into a graveyard long before the hollow sky started breathing. The buildings had been abandoned, empty shells that the sky slowly choked to dust. The streets were littered with broken promises and faded memories. It was a cycle. The hollow sky would claim a new generation, a new set of souls, and it would teach them, slowly, agonizingly, how to live under its rule. The survivors, the few who had resisted long enough, would rebuild the city, but the sky would always return. Always. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out more. I had to know why the hollow sky had come for us. But I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth. I wasn't sure anyone ever was. The next morning, I ventured out again, moving cautiously, instinctually, avoiding the main roads. I had learned to avoid the crowded paths, the places where the hollow-eyed ones gathered, slowly filling the streets with their empty, puppet-like march. They were like shadows, walking in unnatural sync, responding to the whims of the sky. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were simply there, a reminder of what happened when the hollow sky took its grip. But I couldn't avoid it forever. I needed answers. I needed to understand what happened to the city, to the sky, to me. And there was only one place that might hold the answers. The old library on the edge of the district. It was a crumbling structure, its walls half ruined, but the books inside, well, they were supposed to be something of a legend. Books that had survived the worst of the sky's rage. Hidden by the last few who had known what it was before. The library had a reputation. The people who lived nearby whispered that those who had entered never came back. That the books inside weren't just filled with knowledge, but with something else. Something darker. I had to go. I had no choice. I approached it cautiously, my breath shallow, every step echoing in the silence of the city. The building loomed before me like a twisted skeleton, its jagged silhouette cutting into the darkened sky. I glanced up at the clouds, but the sky was still, almost waiting, as if watching me. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. The door creaked open with a sharp, grating sound. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the weight of forgotten years. The library was a labyrinth of shelves, each one sagging under the weight of ancient tomes. But it wasn't the books that drew me in, it was the smell. The sharp, metallic scent of old pages mingled with something else. The faint, lingering scent of the same poison that the hollow sky released. The air in here was wrong, alive. I took a deep breath and began searching. The shelves groaned under my touch as I pulled down book after book. Most were useless, forgotten history, myths, half-lost fables. But in the farthest corner of the room, I found something different. A single tome, bound in weathered leather, its spine cracked and worn. The title was faded, nearly unreadable, but I made it out. The Sky That Breathes. I opened it slowly, carefully, as if the book itself might lash out. The pages inside were yellowed, brittle, but the words were alive in a way I couldn't explain. They pulsed, faintly, as if the very text had been written with something that wasn't human. I could feel the air around me shift as I began to read. The words spoke of the hollow sky, yes, but they spoke of more than that. They spoke of the origin, the birth of the living clouds, and the city that had been built beneath them. There was mention of an experiment, an ancient power that had been harnessed by the city's founders. They had sought to control the sky, to use it, to bend it to their will. But in doing so, they had awakened something that couldn't be controlled. Something that would never let them go. And there, buried deep in the book, was the truth that made my blood run cold. The hollow sky had never been a natural phenomenon. It had been created, and it was always meant to replace the world beneath it. The weight of the book in my hands was unbearable. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the words, even though every letter, every line felt like it was dragging me into some bottomless pit. The sky had never been a natural phenomenon. It had been crafted, brought into being by those who thought they could bend it to their will. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional. And now the hollow sky wasn't just a force to be reckoned with. It was the ultimate predator, and we were its prey. I flipped through the pages faster now, desperate to understand, to find some clue, some way to fight it. But the more I read, the more I realized that this wasn't a book about salvation. This was a book about destruction. The founders of this city had been scientists, philosophers, madmen, all of them. They had sought to control the sky, to harness its power, to make the world beneath it thrive. They were obsessed with immortality, with transcending the limits of the human body. But in their arrogance, they had awakened something they couldn't comprehend, a consciousness that was older than time itself. It hadn't just been a force of nature, as they'd believed. No, it was something alive, something aware, and it had been waiting for them to touch it, to give it the power it needed to break free. The book spoke of a ritual, a series of steps meant to bind the sky to the city. The founders had been preparing for years, using their experiments to manipulate the atmosphere, to create an artificial intelligence in the clouds. They had wanted to fuse the natural with the synthetic, to make the sky a living, breathing entity that would serve the city's needs. It was supposed to be a new era, a utopia. But they had been fools. Once they had succeeded, once the sky had breathed, it had turned on them. The first of them to fall were the city's leaders. The hollow sky claimed them, warped their bodies and minds until there was nothing left but husks, twisting under its control. The others had tried to run, tried to escape, but the sky followed. It always followed. The worst part, the part that had my hands shaking, was the final revelation buried deep in the pages. The city, this city, wasn't just a victim of the sky's wrath. It was its breeding ground. The hollow sky had infected it. It was alive inside every stone, every brick, every breath of air. The people who had survived the initial onslaught weren't safe. They had become carriers, vessels for the sky's influence. The very act of living beneath it made them part of the cycle. I closed the book slowly, my breath ragged in my chest. It wasn't just the city that had been poisoned. It was the land itself, the air we breathed, the streets we walked. The hollow sky was inside of us, changing us, feeding off of our fear, our desperation. We were never meant to escape. Not really. I sat there, staring at the book in my lap, trying to process the enormity of what I had just uncovered. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, the knowledge settling like a cold stone in my stomach. I had come here looking for answers, but now that I had them, I didn't know what to do. There was no hope here. There was only the slow, inevitable pull of the sky's breath, and the city, our city, was already suffocating under it. A creak from the floor above jolted me out of my thoughts. I stood up quickly, panic surging in my chest. I wasn't alone. Someone or something was in the library with me. I moved silently toward the stairs, my footsteps barely making a sound on the cracked wooden floor. As I crept up, I could hear the faintest whispering. Not voices, but a sound like wind through the trees, a hiss that carried on the air. The hollow sky, I could feel it growing closer, its presence suffocating the space around me. I reached the top of the stairs and froze. There, in the far corner of the library, was a figure. A person, or at least what used to be a person. Their back was turned to me, and they were bent over something. An old, decaying map on a desk. The figure's movements were slow, deliberate, like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. The air around them shimmered, a faint mist trailing from their body, as though they were a part of the fog itself. I knew what this was. It wasn't a person. It was a carrier. Someone who had been warped, transformed by the hollow sky's influence. And now they were no longer human. They were a servant, a puppet of the clouds. Don't come any closer," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the heavy, suffocating air. The figure didn't respond. Its head tilted unnaturally, and then, with a sharp, jerking motion, It turned to face me. Its eyes were hollow, like two empty sockets, but there was something there, something faint and terrible, a spark of awareness, a spark of recognition. And then it spoke. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, its voice a raspy whisper that echoed in the silence. "The sky sees you now. It knows you." I backed away, terror shooting through my veins. The figure took a step forward, its limbs twitching, jerking with the unnatural rhythm of the hollow sky's influence. It reached for me, its fingers stretching out like tendrils, and I felt a surge of primal panic flood my chest. I turned and ran, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I had made it out of the library, into the cold, damp air of the street. I could still feel the presence of the figure behind me, as though it were following, as though the hollow sky had sent it to make sure I didn't escape. The city felt more suffocating now than ever before. The weight of its history, the weight of the hollow sky itself, pressed down on me. I could feel it in the air, in my skin, in my bones. It was watching, always watching, waiting for the moment when I would slip up, when I would let my guard down, when I would breathe too deeply. And I knew then there was no escape. The hollow sky had already claimed us all. We were just waiting for the inevitable. I couldn't stop shaking. Every part of me screamed to run, to get as far away from the city, from the hollow sky as possible. But where would I go? The city was a prison, its walls closing in with every breath I took. The hollow sky's influence wasn't just confined to the buildings or the people. It was in the very air, in the very soil beneath our feet. There was no place to escape to. I couldn't even be sure if the sky would let me leave, let me breathe fresh air, let me live. I had to make sense of it. There had to be a way to fight back, a way to reverse whatever had been done to the city. Maybe the old texts in the library held more secrets. Maybe the founders of this hellish world had left behind some clue, some final step they had missed in their pursuit of godhood. Or maybe, just maybe, the sky itself could be destroyed, torn down before it finished consuming everything. I didn't know if it was foolishness or desperation, but I was willing to try anything, even if it meant going deeper into the heart of the city. That night, I returned to the center, to the part of the city where the influence of the hollow sky was the strongest. It was the area closest to the original experiment, where the city's founders had once built their great observatories and laboratories, where they had crafted the first rituals that bound the clouds to the earth. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I couldn't stay away. The pull was too strong. The streets were dark, as they always were now, but tonight, the clouds hung lower than usual. The sky seemed almost tangible, like it was suffocating the streets, pushing down with a weight so oppressive that my skin felt like it was crawling. The air tasted thicker, sharper. I could feel the subtle vibrations, the pulse of the sky thrumming beneath my feet. It was watching me. I made my way through the streets, keeping to the shadows. The city was strangely quiet tonight, the usual rustle of life drowned out by the low hum of the sky above. No children played in the alleys. No merchants peddled their wares. No voices rang out from behind windows. The hollow sky had claimed them, or they had learned to hide from it. I didn't know which. There was a building up ahead, its silhouette barely visible in the haze. The sign outside read, "The Observatory," the same one I had heard of in whispered stories. It was an ancient structure, more of a ruin now than anything else. But it was here that the founders had attempted to communicate with the sky, to mold it to their will. I stepped inside, the door creaking as I pushed it open. The air within was stale, thick with the smell of mildew and something else. A sickly, almost sweet odor that I recognized instantly. The poison of the hollow sky. It clung to the walls, to the very stones beneath my feet. Inside, the observatory was a maze of crumbling stone, shattered glass, and forgotten machines. The telescope that once gazed into the heavens now stood silent, its lens cracked and clouded. But what caught my attention wasn't the telescope. It was the altar in the center of the room. A stone platform etched with strange symbols, covered in dust and decay. I approached cautiously, my heart racing. As I stepped closer, I noticed the inscriptions on the altar, the same symbols that appeared in the book I had found in the library, the same symbols that had been used to bind the sky to the city. The sky had not only been captured, it had been summoned. And whatever they had done here, whatever ritual had been performed, was still active. The hollow sky's presence lingered like a wound that would never heal. I ran my fingers over the cold stone, feeling the faint hum beneath it. A ripple of energy, almost like a heartbeat, pulsed through the room. The air thickened, becoming more oppressive, and I could hear the whispering again. The same soft, hissing voice I had heard in the library. "You shouldn't have come here," it murmured, as though it was speaking from within the very walls. My heart skipped a beat. The sky was aware of me. It had been waiting for me. It had been guiding me to this place. The ground beneath me shifted. I pulled my hand away from the altar, but it was too late. The room seemed to shift with me. The walls warped, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. The air thickened, congealed, swirling around me as though the very atmosphere itself had become liquid. The sky above me, the sky in the city, began to respond. The clouds trembled, vibrating violently as though they were alive, convulsing, reacting. I felt it in my bones, that horrifying knowledge that the sky was no longer just watching. It was drawing closer, closer to me. The altar shuddered, and the ground cracked beneath my feet. I stumbled backward, panic setting in. A low, mournful howl echoed from the depths of the building, and I realized with a sickening jolt that it wasn't the wind. It was the hollow sky itself. It was reaching for me. I ran, bolting toward the exit, but the room seemed to stretch, growing further away with every step. The walls were closing in, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. I could barely breathe, the poison of the sky clouding my lungs, making my eyes water. I couldn't see clearly. I could barely keep my balance as the building shook, the ground beneath me heaving as though it were alive. Something reached out and grabbed me. I gasped, stumbling, and felt fingers, cold, clammy, wrong, wrap around my wrist. I turned, but there was no one there. There was no one, just a twisting, writhing mass of shadow, shapes that moved as though they were part of the very air. The hollow sky had infected everything. It wasn't just in the clouds anymore. It was inside the walls, inside the streets, inside me. The city was dying. The sky was consuming it, pulling everything into itself, one piece at a time. I broke free of the grip and ran out into the night, gasping for air, but the taste of poison was still in my mouth. I could still feel the sky's pulse, its rhythm, its breath. It was with me, inside me. I wasn't free. I wasn't going to survive this. None of us were. The night outside had grown even thicker. The city seemed to pulse in rhythm with the hollow sky, like the two were bound together, one feeding off the other. I stumbled through the streets, each step heavier than the last, my breath shallow, ragged, poisoned by the very air I was trying to escape. It didn't matter where I went. The sky was with me, suffocating, pulling at me like some invisible tether. The weight of it, the breath of it, was unbearable. I could feel its presence inside me now, not just in the air, not just in the shadows, but in the way my own body reacted. The poison had settled in my lungs, deep and slow. It burned when I breathed. It burned when I thought. I could feel the sky pressing against my thoughts, tugging at my consciousness like it was trying to shape me, to bend me to its will. I had become part of it. There was no escape. I passed by what had once been a bustling square, but now it was nothing more than a hollow shell, a ghost of what it had been. The buildings were crumbling, leaning precariously, their windows shattered, their walls festering under the weight of the sky's influence. The streets were empty, save for the occasional twisted figure, moving with that same jerky, puppet-like motion, their eyes clouded with the sky's poison. I tried to ignore them, tried to focus on moving forward, on escaping, but something made me stop. A low, drawn-out wail echoed through the streets. It came from somewhere ahead, from the ruins of the old market. It was a sound I had heard before, the cries of the lost, of the ones who had succumbed to the hollow sky's grip. But this time it was different. This time the wail wasn't just an echo. It wasn't just the wind. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest, my legs feeling like lead. As I drew closer, the wail grew louder, more frantic. It was a voice, person crying out for help. I found them in the heart of the market. An old woman, bent and frail, her hands gripping the stone of a fallen pillar as if it were the last anchor keeping her tied to the world. Her skin was ashen, her face gaunt, but her eyes, they were clear, sharp, aware. She saw me. She saw me. "Help me!" she gasped, her voice cracking. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and I could see the bloodshot veins bulging beneath her skin. "You must leave the city. It will take you." She shuddered violently, and I could hear the faintest sound, like wind, like whispers, coming from her mouth, as though the hollow sky itself was speaking through her. "It knows you." I took a step back, my pulse quickening. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What is it? What's happening?" The woman let out a strangled laugh, her body jerking violently. "You don't understand, do you?" she rasped. "You never will. It's already too late. It's inside you." She gasped again, her eyes wide and wild. "You'll be like me soon, like all of us. It wants you, it needs you. You won't escape." Her words didn't make sense. They couldn't. The hollow sky couldn't be inside me. I hadn't succumbed. I wasn't like the others. But as I stood there, looking at her, something shifted. Something inside me. The air was thick, almost solid, and I felt a strange pressure against my skull, like fingers poking at my brain. I blinked hard, trying to clear the dizziness, but the sensation only intensified. The woman's words echoed in my mind, louder now. "It's inside you. It's already in you." I turned and fled, but my legs felt like they were moving through thick, molasses-like air. Couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The world around me seemed to warp and twist, the buildings around me bending at impossible angles, their edges frayed, the colors of the sky darkening to an unnatural hue. I heard it again, the whispering, the hissing, as if the sky itself were speaking directly to me. "Come to me," I gasped, my mind reeling. What was happening? What had I done? Was it already too late? Had the hollow sky, had it already taken me? I collapsed to my knees, clutching my head in agony as the pressure inside my skull grew unbearable. The sky inside me, was pulling at my thoughts, trying to take control, trying to merge me with it. I could feel it like a pulse deep within my chest, reaching through my veins, through my very bones. It was breathing with me now. It was breathing through me. I could see it then, the sky above me, stretching, swirling, growing closer and closer. Its dark, clouded mass expanding to envelope the city. It was alive, alive in a way I couldn't explain. A mass of writhing tendrils of darkness that reached out with purpose, with hunger. I saw the shapes moving within it. Twisted, deformed figures, all crawling toward me, toward the heart of the city. I staggered to my feet, but it was too late. The ground beneath me trembled, shaking violently, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, pulling me back. I turned, but there was no one there. Just the air, thick with the smell of decay, of rot. I felt it then, a sharp, suffocating breath at the back of my neck, and the world tilted. I was falling, but there was no ground beneath me. There was only the sky. I was inside it now. I was no longer just beneath it, no longer just a part of the city. The hollow sky had taken me. I could feel it, the air around me thick with the pulse of its life. I had been swallowed whole. And then I understood. There was no escape. Not from the sky. Not from the city. We were all part of it now, all bound to it, all feeding it, living inside it like insects in a hive. The hollow sky wasn't just above us. It was us. It was always going to be this way.